Yo, what's good? This morning, man, I'm gonna rant about this gender war, but it looks like more and more it's being fueled by men. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, got the flight book. It's a library. I'm in the deal. Just took a flight to Bora and foreign cars like foreigners. Berry on her. Up in France, bitch, bonjour. I been come to go so we going Paris tomorrow. Only Paris we carry, spin at the mall. We doing the same alone. My diamonds be saying, add some more change. That's the same alone. Dripping all the way from home and taking the wrong. Got the flight book, it's a library. We ain't flying solo. Tune in to the show. It's the passport bros. No excuse entertainment. Jay Slay on the show. Turn it up some more. It's the passport bros.
Yo, what's good? What's good? Hope all is well out there. Shout out to the Passport Bro community. Let's get it in. Let's get it in. So, man, I've been thinking about a lot of stuff I've been seeing on like YouTube, what's been going on in the US as it pertains to black men, the media, things of that nature. So I'm going to talk about three different type of categories as it pertains to the war against black men. One, coming from the women, whether it's women that's against men exploring their options, what you've seen on Stephen A's show, and then also what we see what's going on in Georgia as far as the political aspect. Then also, I'm going to talk about black men warring against other black men on social media. You got the Derek Jacksons of the world. You got the Passport Bros haters. And then you got the rappers that's getting killed by other black men in the United States. So I see all these things going on. Not only that, you got the transgender community with issues with black men. So let's talk about it, man. Let me see who I got in the building. Brooklyn, GQ was good. Somebody from Facebook. No, I'm not in Brazil yet, bro. Garfield was good, was good. So let's talk about the women first, specifically black women on this gender war. And to be honest with you, I feel like a lot of it is being fueled by a lot of men. So one example is, I don't know if you guys been watching certain trolling pages, but you got this guy like Rico. He go by Rico. He's married to a Latina, but he goes on his shows on panels promoting men to be promoting men, more men should be stepfathers. He has a vitriol towards men that are traveling, and all his arguments is just about how men are failing in the community and failing black women. So you have a segment of men, and I'm not trying to generalize, but you have a segment of men that grew up in single parent households. I grew up in a single parent household, but I took on more of the masculine mentality. I didn't really take my mom's side on things. I kind of had a more independent mindset, when it came to, let's say, the absence of my father, for example, where some men, took a different approach. So you got men that have issues with their dad, maybe them being absent, or maybe how they may have treated their mom or things their mom told them about their dad. But more or less, you this is I mean, and this is serious. You have a large segment of men that have issues with black men because of their father, their relationship with their father. So they're taking their issues out on other black men because of the issues they have with their father, whether their father was absent or or how that father may have treated his mom. Nevertheless, and a lot of times men don't really hear the other side of the story at the end of the day. So you got men that are pretty much taking the side of black women because of what they been through with their father. So that's one thing we got to recognize. Now, the other parts of the gender war, as far as black women, try to promote is competition. So when they bring up things about having more degrees, running laps around men, the type of employment opportunities they're able to obtain, or the type of progress they have made in politics, when they brag and compare, that ignites a gender war because men never look at their women as competition in any race. Men naturally look at a natural order of leadership and support. So somebody had made up a good point when it came up with the Ice Cube Black Plan, and then the women that was on that Fox Black Soul, they mentioned that where is the agenda for black women? And it's like, okay, don't black people include black women? And so the fact that they even had to come at that, they look at black men as we're not on the same team. You know what I mean? So that's another example of the gender war. Now, I don't know what issues, and maybe somebody in the chat, I don't know what issues trans gentlemen have with black men or straight black men. We're not trying to date them. We don't we haven't left them to be single mothers because they can't have children. So I don't understand the issue. Trans or a lot of the LGBT have issues with straight black men. So I don't understand that. But they are joining forces with black women on their issues with black men. So another thing I wanted to mention too is that there are men, that black men that have issues with black men because maybe something happened during their childhood, something traumatic. I've heard men say that they were, abused or molested as a child by a man or, something like that. So I could understand there's some trauma as it probably relates to that. But the bigger issues, what I see on a larger scale, is what I see on YouTube and what I see just in the hip hop community. On YouTube, I don't know how things go down in other spaces or other ethnicities when it comes to like content creation and beefing and reactions and things like that. But the level of back and forth, dissing, threats, just the constant quote unquote internet bullying, tough talk, I haven't seen in any other group of people. Not even, I don't even see it amongst black women. You know what I mean? So I don't know what's going on, but black men black men in the manosphere, a space that's supposed to be, for men, highest level of conflict, and a lot of it stems from hate. So that's pretty much what I want to get to. It stems from hate. And what you see in the passport bro space, what you see with Kevin Samuels, what you even see with like bigger platforms like Fresh and Fit, even though I may not agree with certain points certain creators make, a lot of hate comes from people being successful or people having momentum, everything. Like why don't we celebrate each other? You know what I mean? We don't celebrate each other, you know, for the most part, you know, and it's sad. Hate is the root of everything. You know, that situation with PNB Rock, you know, that wasn't it was a robbery, but it was more personal too. It was more personal too. It wasn't like you know, people get robbed in Colombia all the time, and for the most part, you know, if you give it up easily, you know what I mean, nothing's not going to happen to you. And then some people that may do try to fight for their stuff, a lot of times they still just strong arm them and take it without having to take somebody's life. But, you know, it's a shame that so many rappers over the last 3 years have lost their life over another man hate, another man hating. You know what I mean? So, and then we could talk about like the drill rapping and you know what's happening a lot of Chicago rappers. Um, you know, I'm seeing uptick in crime in Philadelphia, and you know we really have to take a hard look in the mirror, you know, at a lot of things as well. Now I know most of you guys are positive, you know, stand up brothers, you know, but we do have to recognize that you know the gender war is is coming from two fronts. You know what I mean? A lot of us dealing with, you know, vitriol from the women, and then also we dealing with it from the men. You know, even to a certain extent in a travel community. You got guys that beef in the travel community because they found out another brother smashing a prostitute that they smashed, or that she being you know paraded or showcased in a private group. You know, you got brothers that get mad that you tried to talk to a hooker that your homie was cool with, and it's like, bro, like why? You know what I mean? Like why? And that's where the abundance mindset fails. You know, you know, you supposed to have the abundance mindset, especially when it comes to stuff like that. But we have to get away from we can't move forward as black men until we are all on the same accord. You know, we can't be beefing with each other and then expect, you know, women to follow us. You know what I mean? If they see we broken and we beefing, all they got to do is pick a side. They're going to pick the side that's going to cater to them, you know? So, you know, another thing too is about, I wanted to talk about, I'm going to talk about more in depth later, but when it comes to, you know, simping and tricking and things like that, you know, that gets women on their side. You know, just like the guys like the Derek Jacksons of the world, they do things to get women on their side because when a man, you know, when a man has to team up with a woman, it's because he feels slighted. He felt slighted by a man before. Some man has disappointed him to the fact where he said, you know what, no more, um, no more bro code. You know what I mean? Like I'm on team woman because some man has hurt you or you felt disrespected by, and now you just have this, you know, spew of hate towards men. That's what Derek Jackson is. You know, they've sold out they sold men out pretty much. Let me catch up on some of the chat. Um, Somebody on Facebook said, bro, it's cool to use the word. In general, generalizations are generally correct based on the law of averages. 80% of black women are single mothers. That's called history, the evaluation of one's history. BGS made that point years ago. The gender war is over, he said. The gender war, and he got some pushback about saying the man won the gender war. It's not even a gender war no more. It's more of a it's an intra race war. We have a war within our community. You know what I mean? The race war it's been going on since, you know what I mean, since slavery. Still today, it's just covered up and packaged differently. So we don't even talk about the race war. You know what I mean? We just pretty much waiting for people to die out. You know, it's just a waiting game with that. The gender war, honestly, the gender war on the grand scheme of things was more between uh, the majority population, which is white men, feminists, and that was the gender war. The Me Too movement don't really have the Me Too movement attack more white men than anything. You know what I mean? Black men really wasn't in those executive positions to really be leveraging their title, to manipulate women. So the Me Too was more towards directly towards, white men, that's had power since the beginning. So the actual war is within the black community, and heterosexual black men, heterosexual um, working black men, successful black men, we get it the hardest. We seeing it on all fronts. So that's why, when it comes to traveling or people that associate with red pill, which I consider, guys that gave up on dating and relationships in the US, that's more of a red pill reaction. You know what I mean? I'm done with the matrix and I'm going to travel because I'm not trying to be involved in any type of gender war. Like, I'm out. You know what I mean? You're only part of it if you participate in it. So that's why, when Man Tomorrow, shout out Man Tomorrow, that's what Man Tomorrow mentioned about, why is it being brought in our space? Why is the gender war being brought into space? It has no place. Typically, trips I've been on, I've seen a lot of black men. Most of the time, everybody's smiling, having a good time. I, Me personally, I have never seen men like get into a fight at a club out the country. I've never seen, I never seen conflict on the ground. And black men, we have a lot of testosterone. Things could pop off any moment. And, a lot of times when it's just too many black men in one place, especially in the US, like something is gonna pop off. But I've never seen dudes that edgy overseas. Places like Sosua, Cartagena, things like that. So I know that the guys that are traveling, for the most part, they're not trying to, they're not trying to participate in the war. We're not the haters. We're not the haters of society because everything is about resources. And I mentioned this on another stream or another panel, and some people just don't get it. Maybe because, I'm thinking on things on a higher level, or, what I mean? But everything ties back to resources. Europeans, white men beef centuries over centuries in Europe over land and resources because they, because the kings, the monarchies, the people that had, gold or riches, they had all the women. You know, what I mean, that was like polygamy from the beginning of the time, and that's why a lot of newer nations. You ever notice when the United States was formed and other new nations were formed? When they a lot of the constitutions was based on what they didn't want to see from the countries they left from. They didn't want to see a monarchy, so that's why the Americas you didn't see monarchies like that. They didn't want to see polygamy because polygamy means that men are going to be left out and men are going to be fighting and killing each other, and so they looked at polygamy as something that was dangerous to society. But it all the beef starts from lack of resources. All beef starts from lack of resources. It happens in prisons, lack of resources, whether it's food, whatever. But when you travel overseas, there's an abundance of resources. There's an abundance of women. There's no shortage of women. I was just talking about in a group about Bogota. Bogota is like the biggest city in Colombia. The highest number of single women are there. There's so many. Like if you go on like a typical street in Bogota, they got like these, basically whole houses. But you see women standing outside. When you see women standing outside and you hear loud music and they dress pretty much half naked, you kind of know what it is. But you damn near see them like on every block, like you see a liquor store in the hood. So there's abundance. When you have abundance of entertainment, women, food, housing, whatever you want to call it, when you have abundance, there's no conflict. You know what I mean? So travelers, that should be the proof to y'all that beef and hate, one, starts with lack of resources. So when it comes to, like, let's say the rap game, right? A lot of these guys, these especially drill rappers, they know that there's only so many rappers that can kind of hold the spotlight, that could dominate the radio waves, that could sell out concerts. Like everybody can't, there's only so much audience out there. So everybody is fighting for that piece of, pretty much that piece of the pie. And so the fact that that's a lack of resource, being able to be successful in the rap game, guys are taking each other out because for a lot of them, that's the only way to have resources is through rap. And it's sad because a lot of people probably can't eat if they approach it a different way. But that's another thing. When it comes to YouTube, it's kind of dumb because YouTube is unlimited. Nobody nobody everybody shares the same audience. Everybody that's a creator gets ads on their videos. Nobody is like it's not like one person gets a certain amount of ads and other people don't. Like everybody gets ads. You know what I mean? Whether you got the same audience or not. So people beefing YouTube to try to climb to the top. I mean, they treat it like a hip hop game. And so instead of collabing, finding ways where pretty much everybody could eat. Like everybody want to tear it down because they don't understand. One, they don't understand the business. They don't understand economics, and it's just hard. It's just hard to get through. You know, but once again, it boils down to resources. If everybody, let's say, created content, if everybody had 100,000 subscribers, they probably wouldn't be beefing because they feel like they, I mean, they have plentiful resources. So That's where a lot of it stems from. The guys that hate on the passport bros, and I'm gonna say this till I'm blue in the face, is people that hate are the people that don't travel or can't travel. And so some people can't travel because of time and how they make their money. You got guys like, or you got channels like, they don't really hate, but channels like Fresh and Fist, they just kind of turn their face on guys that travel, and they know in the back of their head, if they did shows, they could do the same content in Brazil or Colombia and have women at the table that could speak English, and really they'll really blow up. But they can't travel, like that because they invested everything in the United States, you know, and so it'll take getting to learn another place, you know, connecting with the right people. So it's not they could afford to do it, but they can't do it because of how how they have things set up in the United States. So a lot of men can't travel because of just how they got things set up, not because they can't afford it. It's just because their lifestyle just doesn't allow them to have the time. But guys still hate because of that. The number one reason, I would say most black men hate is because they can't travel. Because they can't travel because uh they can't afford it. And not saying they can't afford it because they're broke, is because they can't afford it because they don't know, because they can't manage their funds to be able to travel. Because a lot of times to travel, you have to move something around. You have to move around. You may have to cut down on certain things you like, whether it's like buying Jordans or spending money on dates to hook up with chicks in the U.S. It's a lot of, depending on how much you make, there's a lot of budget cuts you have to make. And some guys are mad because they don't want to give up. They don't want to give up certain things they got in the U.S. So they hate on guys that's able to do it. And there's guys that they're only able to travel maybe once a year or twice a year, and they don't hate. They just like, man, this is what I could do. I believe in the passport bro movement, but I can't do how other guys do. So it's not a competition. Some guys just able to travel a lot. You know, it's a lot of guys that's able to travel more than me. That I've ran into. And they have 9 to 5 and things of that nature. They may be able to do more things remotely, nevertheless, but it still boils down to resources, man. And hate. So if you're doing something that someone is not doing, and if with black, especially with black men, people hate. Men hate. Women hate. Women hate more because they're at competition with a lot of men. They're at competition. I don't know where the competition started from, but this is my guess. Competition started from the media putting black men above black women in this regards. When you hear, black women have to hear the reports saying that Asian men and black women are the least married. So now black women, instead of looking at saying, why is that? They looking like, man, we can't. They took it as we shouldn't be below black men. How dare they put us at the bottom of any list as it pertains to black men? You know, so I'm not sure where it stemmed from, but I don't. Black women have a lot of black women have looked at us as competition.